Welcome back to Almost a True Crime Podcast, a product of Bitch Pack Media. We are your hosts, Taryn and Madison. Listener discretion is advised due to the mature content and the amount of cuss words we say. You've been warned.
Hey guys.
Hey, what's up?
Welcome back. Neither of us were saying anything.
No, we weren't.
We're both thinking.
Welcome back. Yeah, I was just pre-reading. Welcome back to part 2.
Whoop, whoop.
I feel like we haven't done a two-parter in a while.
We haven't.
And also I have another two-parter ready to go.
Oh, yeah. I love them.
So we can just get right into it, really?
Yep.
Because it's going to be kind of long.
Let's go.
So
Give
we left off with the 911 call when Lyle and Erik got home and discovered that their parents had been murdered. Air quotes.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. This, if you're familiar with the case at all, this part will have trigger warning descriptions of sexual abuse, because that is the very famous defense that they used. Just so you know, I will tell you immediately before I say it, but just so you're aware. Okay, so they call 911. Lyle is sobbing. Erik is screaming in the background. A minute or two later, Michael Butkus. I know. I'm like, God, I'm going to have to say Butkus like a million times. It's Butkus. Butkus, right?
It might be Bucus.
Buckus.
Because at my old job, there was a woman that would call in and we thought her last name was Butkus, but it was Bucus.
Should I say Buckus?
That'd be Bucus.
Okay.
But it was spelled like Buchas.
No, this has got a T. Butkus.
I bet you it's Bucus, though.
Okay. Out of respect for Michael, we will say Buckus. So he's a Beverly Hills police officer, and his partner John Zarnacki, arrived at the scene minutes later. After walking around the outside of the mansion for several minutes, the police officers heard screaming and watched as two men ran out of the front door side by side, almost in step. They're acting exactly the same.
Oh my gosh.
The men ran past the officers and through the gate in front of the driveway and fell to their knees on the grass between the sidewalk and the street. Over and over again, they shouted, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." The two cops tried to get information out of the men, but the younger one was irrational, running around and trying to ram his head into a tree.
Oh,
that would be Erik.
God.
The older one was trying to restrain and calm the younger one. Very, very on brand for them.
Just losing their shit.
Yeah. Shortly after Buckus and Zarnacki discovered the bodies of Jose and Kitty Menendez, Detective Les Zoller received a call at home from Marvin Lanone, the chief of the Beverly Hills Police Department, informing him that he was being appointed to head the investigation of the Menendez murders. Zoller was 38, but looked younger and was considered to be the Beverly Hills Police Department's top investigator. Can you imagine just getting that call? You're just sitting at home and you're like, you're in for it. You need to leave immediately.
Yeah.
And go work this giant
the
case.
Fucking bat signal.
Like, reminds me of Scott Peterson. Like, that guy was just sitting at home on, like, Christmas.
Yep.
To drive and get into what he did not know was, like, the biggest case of all time. When Zoller arrived at the Elm Drive mansion, he noticed that nothing had been stolen, although the family... Rookie mistake.
That is so stupid.
That is stupid. Although the family room where the murders were committed was messy, it appeared that the clutter was not the result of a room that had been turned upside down in a robbery. It appeared as though the victims were acquainted with their killers, and Zoller noticed that there was no forced entry into the home. These are things you don't think about that look so obvious. Mm-hmm. And, like, you don't think that they can tell from, like, body, like, how their bodies lay, that they knew their killers. Things that, like, that are so crazy to me.
I just can't believe they wouldn't have made it look like a robbery.
Yeah, what the fuck are you thinking? But
even if, like, someone had something out for them, they would have stole shit.
Yeah, stole some stuff. Why not? They're dead.
You would think, oh, well, then maybe not. Like, kill for hire.
That comes up.
Okay. All right.
So, Dan Stewart, a retired police detective hired by the family to investigate the murders, gave the most graphic description of the site in the television room. He said, "I've seen a lot of homicides, but nothing quite that brutal. Blood, flesh, skulls. It would be hard to describe, especially Jose, as resembling a human that you would recognize. That's how bad it was."
Holy shit. Lyle
and Erik were taken to the police department for questioning. The police did not consider consider them suspects and wanted to see if the brothers knew anything about the crime. So they're not being taken in immediately as suspects. Yeah. They're being taken in like, what the fuck happened?
To be interviewed.
Yeah. Sergeant Thomas Edmonds, the police detective supervisor, questioned the brothers. During the questioning, Erik became distraught. He began to sob and was unable to sit still. Lyle was under control and answered questions methodically. After 20 minutes, the questions ceased because Erik broke down uncontrollably. Which just all makes sense when you're thinking about it. Knowing what we know.
I don't know a lot.
Okay.
I mean, I know they did it, obviously.
Yeah. What police were able to get out of the brothers was around 5 p.m. they made plans to get together with a friend at Taste of LA, a local food festival in Santa Monica. The brothers said they left home around 8 p.m. to go to Westwood Village to see License to Kill, the new James Bond film, but the lines were too long, so they went to Century Mall to see Batman. Crazy lie. After, like, what a weird thing to make up. You're going to go see...
It's almost too much. Yeah. Like, you're giving us too much.
After Batman, the brothers drove to Santa Monica but got lost on the way and missed their friend. From a payphone, the brothers called their friend, Perry Berman. Berman and the brothers made plans to meet at the Cheesecake Factory in Beverly Hills.
Oh my God, I've never been to the Cheesecake Factory.
I've been to the Cheesecake Factory once, I think, with Liz. After they called Berman, the brothers drove home to get Erik's fake ID so Erik could buy alcohol. How nice of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the Batman thing might have came... It's not in here. A lot of things I thought would be a big part of the story were not, but I think they had ticket stubs to Batman that they got out of the garbage.
Damn.
So they made up that they... Something weird like that. They must have, like, pre-planned a story going to see James Bond, but they couldn't... I think James Bond might have been sold out. They couldn't get any tickets. So they dug Batman tickets out of the garbage. I just want to... I might be making that up, but I think that's why that sounds so familiar to me.
Seems like a lot to make up.
It does. Anyway, the brothers told police that when they returned home, they noticed smoke in the house, especially in the family room. Seemed odd to Zoller because... What did we say that name, man? Bukas?
Bukas.
Because Bukas and Sarnaki had not seen any smoke when they got there. So that was an odd thing to make up. Lyle told Edmonds about his mother's nervous mood and about her locking doors. Lyle said that his mother was on the verge of contemplating suicide and that she was very edgy and suicidal in the last few years. Lyle didn't explain that Kitty had emotional problems for many years and that she had made a half-hearted suicide attempt 2 years earlier using prescription drugs. Edmonds asked Lyle who hated his parents enough to want to kill them. Edmonds was surprised when Lyle answered, the mob.
The mob?
The mob. Erik said he had spent the night of the murders going through convulsions. We've never seen our dad helpless before. To see him in such a helpless stage gave such revenge in our hearts. Police officers questioned both brothers for several hours that morning, but relatives say police never performed a special chemical analysis of the brothers' hands and clothing designed to show whether either had fired a gun, which is a thing. In Beverly Hills, detectives are trained to perform these tests by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. It is left up to the discretion of the Beverly Hills detective assigned to a particular case to determine whether or not to administer the test or not. They did not at all suspect Lyle and Erik, so they had no reason to perform the test.
Damn.
Had they done this, this would be over.
That's wild.
So, 3 days after Jose and Kitty Menendez were murdered, Dr. Irwin Golden of the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office conducted their autopsies. Jose's autopsy took place first. The first wound that Dr. Golden examined was the shotgun wound to Jose's head. Golden described the wound as a gaping laceration that was 5 inches by 4 inches.
Holy fuck.
Large enough for an adult to thrust his fist through the wound. The brain...
Oh my God.
Yeah. Blown up. The brain had been pulverized. There was also a deformity of the face caused by multiple fractures of the facial and jaw bones. Soot was also found in the wound, indicating that when the fatal shot was fired, the gun had literally been placed against the back of Jose's head. The remainder of Jose's wounds would not have been immediately fatal, although all resulted in much loss of blood. There were 2 shots to the right arm, one below the shoulder that fractured the humerus, and another to the right forearm. There was a shot to the left elbow. The trajectory of the shot was fired from back to front, indicating that this shot could have been one of the first shots fired at Jose as the killer walked around to the front of the couch to face him. Jose was shot in the lower left knee, creating a 3-inch wound that fractured his left femur. Golden discovered that there was bleeding into Jose's body tissue along the wound paths. This meant that Jose's heart had been pumping blood and that the wound at the back of his head, which investigators initially thought was the first shot fired at Jose, was not. Golden said he could not determine the order of the shots fired at Jose, though.
Damn.
So they're thinking they entered from the back and shot him in the back of the head immediately. That can't be true because...
Yeah, his heart was still pumping.
Yeah, the shots on the front of him had blood paths coming down, which means his heart was still pumping. Kitty's autopsy revealed that she had been shot in the left cheek, which caused a 1-inch hole in her face that had fractured her upper jaw and dislodged 4 of her upper teeth.
Oh my God, this is like making my head hurt.
Yeah. There were additional wounds to Kitty's skull, fractures to her lower jaw, and pellet wounds to her tongue. A shot had also lacerated her brain. Dr. Golden found bird shot in Kitty's wounds, which confirmed the investigators' suspicion that Kitty's killers had reloaded their weapons. I don't know what bird shot is, but none of Jose's wounds contained bird shot, so this is how they can tell that Jose was shot first. They shot Kitty, reloaded their gun, and shot Kitty again. Kitty had 3 wounds to her face. The most damaging was 4 inches and extended from Kitty's right cheek across her nose to her left cheek. Golden also discovered that Kitty's right thumb was almost severed. Investigators theorized that Kitty had extended her hand to block the shotgun blast that caused the 4-inch wound in her face as a last effort at self-preservation, so she held her hand up. The only problem with this theory was that the wound to Kitty's hand was on the palm side, not the back of her hand. So most people extend their palms out when attempting to defend themselves. Kitty's wound indicated she extended either her blocking hand in a strange position or she did not want to see who was shooting at her.
Oh.
Like she covered her eyes.
Damn.
Kitty also had shotgun wounds to her right forearm and left breast and 3 wounds to her left leg. The final wound was to her left knee. The shot was from front to back, and that was odd because it came at a different angle than the other shots fired at her leg. Investigators theorized that this might have been the last shot fired at Kitty in an attempt to make the murder appear to be a mob hit. So they're saying someone shot her and then, in order to make it look like a mob, just shot her knees. So, what happened? Maybe. That scared me.
Thank you. Oh, you didn't say
No, I didn't. I didn't actually say that. I said, thank you. We're much, much too close for me to be saying things like that to you.
Brody just blesses himself every single time. He
Does
doesn't
he?
even wait. He's like, oh, bless me.
That's really funny.
I don't know why. It's so funny.
Only child behavior.
Yeah. It's like no one else is here to do it.
Yeah.
I'll just do it myself.
Okay, so this is what is theorized to have happened that they have come up with. So, the men entered the home through the French doors in the study. They walked down the hallway toward the family room located in the back of the house. The men entered the family room, which was illuminated only by the light coming from the television screen. Jose was dozing on the tan leather couch, sitting at the end nearest the door leading to the hallway. Jose's legs were stretched out in front of him. His feet were on a coffee table, along with 2 dishes that contained the remains of ice cream. Kitty was laying under a blanket, and her body stretched out across the couch. Her head was in Jose's lap.
Wow. They were truly just relaxing watching a movie.
Yes.
That is so fucked up.
It is fucked up. One of the men pointed his 12-gauge Mossberg shotgun at the couple and squeezed the trigger. 2 shots were fired at Jose. One shattered the glass and splintered the wood of the French doors behind the couch where Jose was sitting. One pellet struck Jose in the left elbow. Another struck him in the right arm, followed by another. The shots immobilized Jose. One of the killers walked behind Jose and placed a shotgun against the back of his head and fired. The shot blew off the back of Jose's head. Jose's lifeless body came to rest on the couch, slumped slightly to the right. His hands rested on his stomach and his feet on the floor. After the first shots were fired at Jose, Kitty became alert. She woke up to find herself splattered by Jose's blood and body tissue. Kitty stood and began to turn away from her attackers, taking a step or 2 before being shot in the right leg near her calf and in her right arm. Kitty fell between the couch and the coffee table. She struggled to stand again and tried to regain her balance, but slipped as she stepped into her own blood. She stood long enough for her blood to flow vertically down her leg. She tried desperately to walk away, but another shot was fired, which brought her down. Now that she was on the floor, her killers fired indiscriminately, riddling her body with shotgun pellets. Kitty was hit in the left thigh from a range that was so close that the paper wadding that contained the pellets caused her leg to break. She was shot in the right arm and then the left breast, which perforated her left lung. A quart of her blood flowed into her chest cavity. Kitty was not dead. She continued to breathe and tried to crawl away from where she fell, but she could not.
Oh my God. I don't understand how, like, you don't just immediately die from the pain.
I know.
Like, what must that feel like?
I don't ever want to find out. The killers were out of ammunition. They paused, unsure of what to do next. They probably wondered if Kitty would be able to identify them and tell the police who they were and what had happened. They decided they could not take a chance on this happening, ran to the car to get more ammunition. They reloaded their shotguns with birdshot instead of the ball-bearing size pellets they had used before. Okay, that's what birdshot is. Okay. It must be like a different kind of ammo.
Yeah.
So they can tell that they changed. One of the killers ran back inside the house into the family room where Kitty lay dying. Her killer leaned over the coffee table and placed his shotgun against Kitty's left cheek and fired.
Oh my God.
Kitty's body was shot 10 times. Her head had been struck 4 times and her skull was shattered.
Holy fuck.
The killer was not finished. He shot both Jose and Kitty near the left knee. The final act the killers performed was to carefully gather the shell casings from the spreading pools of blood that now covered the couch, floor, and rug under the coffee table. If you look this case up, you can see the crime scene.
Oh my God.
There are crime scene photos of this, I believe. This was a scenario that the police and medical examiner pieced together about the murders of Jose and Kitty Menendez. They ended up not being too far off. Obviously, not all of this happened the way they said it did, but pretty damn close. Erik said that on the night of the murders, he and Lyle had come home to get his fake ID. As Erik was walking toward his car after finding his ID, Lyle met him with their shotguns. "Let's do it," Lyle said. According to Craig, the plan was that Lyle was to shoot Jose and Erik was to shoot Kitty. Craig told the detectives that Erik told him he and Lyle went into the family room. Lyle pointed his gun at Jose and shot him. Lyle then went behind Jose and shot him in the head. Erik told Craig that he was unable to shoot his mother and that when she tried to get away, Lyle shot her. Craig recalled that Erik said, "After it looked like my mother was dead, I shot her twice with my gun." That's what they're saying. Later, they say. They're not immediately saying this. So that's what they say happened. That's what actually happened.
Okay.
Lyle and Erik staged an elaborate memorial service for Jose and Kitty on August 25th, 1989, at the Directors Guild of America in Los Angeles. Lyle and Erik arrived 1 hour late. Erik looked uncomfortable and his face was red and swollen. Lyle appeared calm and cool.
Oh my God.
On August 28th, 1989, a traditional church service was held at the University Chapel in Princeton. Brendan Scott conducted the service. At the service, Lyle spoke for 30 minutes and recalled how much Jose and Kitty had meant to him. Erik was too upset to speak. 4 days after the murders, Lyle and Erik started their infamous spending spree.
I don't know about this.
You don't know about this?
No.
I have a treat for you.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
So?
Nothing screams guilty like spending your inheritance immediately.
4 days after the murders, Lyle... Oh, wait, I already said that. The brothers spent money on new cars, designer label clothes, and jewelry. 3 days after the murders, the brothers spent $15,000 on Rolex watches and money clips.
Jesus Christ.
Because they think they're rich.
Yeah.
Because their inheritance. Like, we're going to inherit all of this money. So, the bulk of the estate's assets were a house on 14 acres in Calabasas that Jose and Kitty had purchased but never lived in, and the Beverly Hills mansion that they did live in.
Okay.
When the loans on both properties were deducted, the value of Jose's real estate was $5.7 million. Damn. Not terrible. At the time of his death, Jose owned 330,000 shares of Live Entertainment that had been trading for around $20 per share. Added to all of this were Jose and Kitty's personal property and automobiles. The estate Jose and Kitty left was valued at $14 million.
Damn.
Lyle and Erik would each inherit only $2 million after loans and taxes were subtracted. Their estate was not that large.
Damn.
So not only was like the total estate at large only valued at $14 million, a friend of Erik's said that the brothers had expected to inherit $90 million.
Oh my God.
They just did not realize.
Wow. Well, yeah, these homes aren't paid off.
Yeah.
Like,
they thought it was perfectly reasonable for them to assume their father was worth way more than he actually was, because they held him to such high regard.
He made them think that.
They're like, there's no way this man is only worth $2 million. Like, absolutely.
Oh.
Well, $4 million, I guess.
What
if they both...
a rude fucking awakening.
Yeah.
$90 million, and they're both getting 2.
Yep. $2 million.
Jesus Christ, that's... Oh, my God. Okay.
Yeah. So, about a week after the murders, Lyle and Erik met with executives at Live Entertainment to discuss any assets the brothers might receive from the company. The brothers were surprised to learn that the $5 million Key Man life insurance policy that Live had purchased for Jose was not valid because Jose had failed to take the physical examination required by the insurance company, which is a thing. You have to finish the paperwork.
Yeah, because if you have any underlying health conditions, they don't got to pay you shit.
Yeah, they won't insure you. So,
oh my God.
They also don't get that.
Oh my God. This is so bad.
Bad. They stayed in various luxury hotels before both getting apartments that cost over $2,000 a month, which, given inflation, that's about like a $5,000 a month apartment for both of them. So $10,000 a month. Lyle hired bodyguards to travel with him for several weeks after the murders.
Surely playing that role that the mob's out to get him.
Yes. Lyle's bodyguards were alarmed when Lyle would jump out of the limousine before it came to a complete stop to shop and spend money. Like, literally cannot
just can't fucking wait.
On one occasion, the bodyguards watched as he purchased $24,000 in stereo equipment. On September 4th, Lyle told the bodyguards he would no longer needed their services because his uncle had contacted someone in the mob and arranged some type of deal.
Never mind. We're all cool.
It's fine.
They killed my mom and dad. Now we're square.
Yeah. Lyle didn't explain how his uncle, a middle-aged businessman from a New Jersey suburb, would go about contacting the mob, or how his uncle managed to remove a sentence of death from his nephew's heads. They just were like, that's done.
Oh my God.
The brothers...
He did not get into Princeton on knowledge.
Surely not.
Straight stupidity.
Stupid. The brothers' shopping sprees continued. Lyle decided that he had to have a new car, the red Alfa Romeo that his parents had purchased for him as a high school graduation present that he never liked had to go.
Jesus Christ.
It's time to move on. The Alfa was replaced by a much more expensive gunmetal gray Porsche 911 Carrera that cost $64,000.
Oh my God.
And Erik had traded...
Also, it only cost $64,000 back then. I feel like...
Given inflation, though.
That's gotta be like...
What year is this? 1989?
Like, how much would a brand new Porsche be nowadays?
Let's see. I use the inflation calculator so much.
That's I didn't know that was a thing. But I always do want to know. Like, what does that equal to today?
Okay, so in 1989, he bought a $64,000 car. $153,000.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Crazy.
Dude, fucking inflation. That's some shit. I'd be so rich if it weren't for inflation.
Inflation is what's bringing us down.
Yes.
Erik traded in his Ford Escort for a Jeep Wrangler. Much more reasonable.
There we go.
Jeep Wranglers are still very expensive.
Yeah.
But you certainly cannot spend $153,000 on a Wrangler. That's... You think...
if you got it, like, custom.
Yeah. Which, you know, he probably did, so...
Yeah.
By October 1989, so months later, Lyle had charged more than $90,000 to Jose's American Express card. He would travel frequently between New Jersey and California on the MGM Grand, an airline that catered to business people with expense accounts.
Oh my God. This is... Well, no shit. They think they have 90 mil just waiting for them.
Yes, they do think this.
So they're like...
Who cares? Also, very famously, Lyle and Erik Menendez sat courtside seats at a basketball game, which
basketball game?
They are on Mark Jackson's basketball card after they murdered their parents sitting courtside, and I do own this basketball card.
Oh my God. What?
They're like in the corner. You can sort of see them.
Oh, the one has a hat on, huh?
Yeah.
Holy fucking shit.
They have already murdered their parents.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
I can't believe you have this.
I had it a long time ago. No.
Oh, well, really? You would think it would be.
I think someone figured this out randomly.
Yeah. Who?
So then I immediately bought it.
Who came across this?
I don't think that.
That's insane.
I mean, I think you can buy it now, but like you cannot advertise. Like you would
Yeah.
have to know whose card it was. You can't.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to advertise it.
Yeah,
as
sell
like,
it like,
the
hey,
Menendez.
the Menendez brothers are on here. Yeah.
No.
Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
That's so cool that you have that.
It's still in the plastic and everything. It is the Knicks NBA
New York
Hoops
Knicks.
1990 Mark Jackson.
That is so wild.
Which good for Mark Jackson because I don't know who the fuck this is.
We've
But
never heard of him.
he's selling these cards.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Isn't that wild?
Wow. Should put that in a museum.
In a museum. So yeah, this is them after they murdered their parents and spent.
Just watching the Knicks.
They just happened to be in the background of that guy's shot for his basketball card.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
It's kind of cool.
So anyway, so Lyle is like trying to establish like the Menendez investment enterprises. Like now he's trying to be a businessman now that Jose is gone.
Gonna keep this family on the map.
Yeah. Obviously, Menendez Enterprises never took off. It just sounds like something you would make up. Menendez Enterprises.
Because
what
what
are
is
you
it?
doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's a front.
What's your enterprise?
Yes.
Lyle hired a bunch of young Princeton friends, and also Lyle had no business experience.
Oh my god.
So he was very
keep
good.
forgetting these kids are like closet idiots.
Dumb. He was very good at acting the part. Like he was planning all these businesses and dressing like a businessman, but he had literally no idea how to do the work.
It reminds me of Tyra Banks in Life Size.
Yes, he's just dressing up and going to work. It's just not doing anything.
She says, I love Apple. Oh, shit. That's funny.
Okay, so Detective Les Zoller and his partner, Detective Lim Lynham. Nope, his name is Tim.
We're losing it.
Tim Lynham, this is why we can't do multiple episodes, had the difficult job of trying to solve the Menendez murders. So, they still don't know what the fuck happened. And they still do not suspect Erik and Lyle when this is going on. They had a million places to start.
Because nobody likes him.
Yeah, because Jose had pissed off a million people.
Yeah.
So they don't have nowhere to
gosh.
start. They have several places to start.
Yeah. And the last place they're going to look is the children.
The detectives were hearing horror stories about Jose's behavior from almost everyone they interviewed. They were confronted with many suspects and a number of theories about who may have committed the murders. So it's like one of those people hate so much that the police are
Anybody
interviewing
could have
them.
fucking done it.
They're like, yeah, he fucking sucked. I'm glad someone murdered him.
Yeah, they're like, it wasn't me, but
yeah.
good off to who did.
Zoller interviewed Jose and Kitty's friends from Calabasas, Peter and Karen Weir. Zoller asked Peter what his first impression of the case was, and Weir said, I have no basis for this, but I wonder if the boys did it. Zoller was surprised at this. He asked Weir to elaborate, and he said that Lyle and Erik always seemed to be too good to be true. They seemed too polite, too differential to adults, and too off. Like he said, something seemed off about those two.
Ugh.
So by the end of the year, the brothers had spent over $1 million, and the detectives now started to look at that much differently. So they were murdered in August. From September, they spent over $1 million of their parents' money.
August to September.
No, I meant August to December.
Oh, I'm like, what?
No, the end of the year.
Still?
That's still a lot of
Oh my
fucking
God,
money.
that's like what, 4 months? I don't know math.
Me either.
Yeah, it is. It's 4 months.
Oh, nice.
8 to 12. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Can I just say
What?
that just from the videos I've seen, I like definitely thought everyone loved the Menendez brothers.
I will get into that. That's
Oh, okay.
fairly new.
Oh, okay. I
Another.
had no idea they were these little crazy psychopaths.
Yeah. That's undisputed. Like,
Straight up.
that's fact.
They're fucking
Sociopath weirdos.
Sociopaths. Yeah.
Another reason by the end of the year the brothers were at the top of the list was because they had called a computer expert on August 31st, 1989, so a week after their parents' murder, to erase the files in Kitty's computer.
Okay.
Police heard that Lyle had made a sudden trip back home from Princeton and destroyed something in the family computer 1 week after the killings. According to an expert hired by Lyle to keep him... According to an expert hired... Why do I want to throw L's in everything?
Hired by Lyle. Because I feel like
Lyle.
It's an L heavy name.
It is. It's 50% L's.
Half of your name is just L's.
Just L's.
my God, it's all so funny.
According to an expert hired by Lyle to help him access the family's computer files, this was a reference to a new will Jose had prepared that conceivably would have left less to his sons and something for other members of the family.
That is fucked up.
Motive if you've ever seen one.
Oh my God.
Lyle told his friend Glenn Stevens what happened. According to Stevens, Lyle said a relative, quote, found a new will and I went there and erased it. A dumbfounded Stevens remembers Lyle telling him, I was in disbelief, I just left.
Why the fuck are you telling people this stuff?
They always fucking do.
God damn.
They always do. Stevens says Lyle displayed signs of nervousness as he discussed the incident. So, like, clearly he's not lying and he can tell. But, like, what do you do? Reminds me of the...
What do you do when someone tells you something like that?
The party episode we did. I don't remember that kid's name. And he murdered his parents and had a party the same day. Dude. And told everyone at the party that his parents were dead upstairs.
Did he show people?
I think he did.
That was a crazy one. What was his name? Tyler or something?
Oh, it was Tyler something. He signed all of his jail mail as hammer time. I remember that. The shit I retain.
We've done some good cases, guys.
We really have.
You're welcome.
You are welcome. On October 24th, 2 months after the murders, as police continued to follow leads, Erik and Lyle Menendez sat down for their first detailed interview in the family mansion with Zoller. Erik sat stiffly at one end of the sofa in the sunken living room. I love a sunken living room.
Me too.
I'm so tacky. I love it. Something about it feels more comfortable than a regular living room.
You should see, you know whose house you would love?
Who?
Courtney's mom's house.
Really?
I always tell Phil, it's like the best layout of a house. Ranch style, sunken living room.
Damn.
It's just a great house. I love it.
So Erik is sitting at one end, very stiff, while Lyle, dressed in a stylish blue and white exercise outfit, slouched with athletic nonchalance in a chair, doing most of the talking. So Erik is stiff, nervous, a wreck, and Lyle is just chilling. Zoller told Erik that he had heard that the brothers were not getting along. Erik complained that Lyle was spending too much money. Erik also complained that Lyle was being just like my father. Glenn Stevens told Zoller that Lyle was, quote, trying to manipulate his brother and get Erik's half of the money.
Oh my God.
Lyle said he and his brother would like to put the Grizzly episode behind them. Quote, finding out who it is, Erik and I are probably not going to be able to do anything about it. To find out who it is and not be able to do anything is probably worse than not knowing. So it's a hard thing.
I don't think anyone agrees with that.
No. So it's a hard thing for Erik and I to decide whether or not we want it solved. It would be great if whoever did it went to jail, but it really doesn't help us in any way. The loss is much greater than the benefits of finding out who did it.
That is the stupidest thing you could ever probably say.
They're dumb.
If you think it was the mob, you're sleeping peacefully at night, even though there's this whatever agreement, you're fine with them living their lives.
It's like, you don't really have to look into this anymore because it's fine.
Let's just call it. Call it a wash.
Call
it's
it
fine.
off.
We're good. You're good. They're gone. It is what it is.
That's it. Do we really have to make it a whole thing?
No,
it doesn't have to be a whole
thing.
thing.
Let's not make it a thing. Oh my God.
Okay. So, if you haven't guessed thus far, the person that is going to dismantle this entire thing is Erik.
Seems as though he's pretty shaky.
So, although Erik appeared cool and calm to Zoller during the interview, Erik was shaken to his core. As soon as the interview was concluded, Erik called Lyle in Princeton. He couldn't reach him. He needed someone to talk to and confide in. Oh, so he called his psychiatrist.
Oh, no!
Yeah. Dr. Jerome Oziel. He comes up a lot. Erik went to see Oziel on October 31st. Where did I say this? Okay, so October 24th, they have this interview. Lyle has been traveling a lot anyway. Lyle leaves Erik alone. So if it sounds weird that I said Erik was in Princeton, it's because this happens a week later. So Erik went to see Oziel on October 31st. During the session, Oziel and Erik walked around Beverly Hills. Oziel encouraged Erik to talk about his depression and suicidal thoughts. A short time later, Oziel and Erik walked back to Oziel's office. As they neared the office, Erik stopped walking and leaned against a parking meter. Oziel stopped walking as well, and Erik said, "We did it. We killed our parents."
Oh my god. Oh my god. What are the rules with like a psychiatrist?
Comes up a lot.
Oh, okay, cool.
Erik told Oziel about the Billionaire's Boy Club miniseries and how he and Lyle had watched it together. That's a really good movie with Ansel Elgort and I think Taron Egerton.
Oh.
And it's based off of a true crime.
Interesting.
So after the miniseries was shown, they talked about how their shared belief that Jose was planning to disinherit them from his will and how terrible their lives were because Jose dominated them. Spurred on by the miniseries, the brothers told each other that they should kill Jose. Kitty presented a problem because their brothers did not want to kill her but could not think of a way to kill their father without also killing Kitty. At this point, Oziel stopped Erik from saying anything more.
Yeah. Shut up.
He's like,
shut up.
Please stop. And he made him call Lyle. So do you stop? Lyle raced over to Oziel's office. Before Lyle arrived at Oziel's office, Erik continued telling his story.
He's like, well, I called him, but I still got to keep going.
He told Oziel about a trip to San Diego to purchase shotguns and how the brothers thought they had committed the perfect crime. They're dumb. They had been careful and cleaned up the shotgun casings. They did not have to worry about fingerprints because the crime was committed in their own home, so naturally their fingerprints would be everywhere, which is like the only true part. Once they had finished cleaning up, Lyle drove Erik's car to Mulholland Drive, a winding road that runs from the Pacific Ocean to the San Fernando Valley. Erik was too shaken to drive, so he gave directions to Lyle as he drove. They stopped on Mulholland Drive, and Erik waited until the area was clear of cars and then threw the shotguns into a nearby canyon. I don't think they were ever found. They headed for a gas station where they dumped their blood-splattered clothing and shoes into a dumpster along with the shell casings. Then they drove home. They had intended to drive to the Cheesecake Factory to meet up with their friend, but Erik was falling apart, so they went home and called the police.
I don't want the brown bread right now.
It's like, I literally don't want to go to the Cheesecake Factory right now. You out of your fucking mind. Lyle is trying to take Erik to the Cheesecake Factory.
The restaurant with the biggest fucking menu.
They look like they're on Schitt's Creek. The menu folds out to the size of an atlas.
That's all I know about the Cheesecake Factory is they have the really good brown bread and they have the biggest menu.
The largest menu. So, Lyle was furious when he arrived at Oziel's office. He was angry that Erik had told Oziel everything. Lyle told Oziel that he thought Jose would be proud of him for committing such an effective murder.
Oh my god. You're sociopath.
Yeah. Oziel explained to the brothers that the difference between a crime that takes place in a moment of heated passion, such as during an argument, and a crime committed to reach a specific goal. He explained that the behavior in the latter situation was considered the behavior of a sociopath. Oziel would later testify in court that the brothers looked at each other and said, "We are sociopaths."
Oh my god.
Lyle then erupted in anger. He threatened Oziel and told Oziel that if he told anyone, he would kill him too.
Good job. Mm-hmm. Good move.
Yeah, smart. On November 2nd, the brothers met with Oziel again. Lyle threatened Oziel again, telling him that he and Erik had considered killing him in order to keep their secret. So, like, we have already considered maybe killing you. So just don't.
Yeah, let me know how that goes.
Yeah. Oziel could have reported Lyle and Erik to the police because they had threatened him, and this threat erased the patient-therapist confidentiality bearer, but he did not. Oh. Instead, he made notes and tape recordings of his sessions with the brothers. On November 17th, Zoller and Linen interviewed Erik's friend Craig Signorelli. Signorelli told the detectives that shortly after the murders had occurred, he had visited Erik at the Beverly Hills mansion. Erik had asked Craig if he wanted to know how it happened. Craig knew immediately what it was. This is when Erik confesses what I said in part 1 about how Lyle shot Jose and Kitty. However, Craig and Erik were famous for messing with each other, so Craig had to admit that it could possibly be a lie.
Who jokes like that, though?
I literally don't know. Zoller met with Pam Ferrero, the Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney assigned to the case. She told Zoller that he didn't have enough to file criminal charges yet, but the information he was assembling sounded promising. Another attorney in the district attorney's office suggested that Craig wear a body wire and meet with Erik to get the story on tape.
A wire.
Zoller didn't think that Craig would do it, but surprisingly, Craig agreed. Craig set up a dinner meeting with Erik for November 29th. The meeting took place at Gladstone's Four Fish on Pacific Coast Highway in Pacific Palisades. At the dinner, Erik told Craig that he had been lying and that he and Lyle had nothing to do with their parents' murders.
Oh my god.
Wild. So, the detectives don't get the break they need until March 1990 from a woman named Judalyn Smith. Smith owned an audio tape business and was also the lover of one Dr. Oziel.
Oh, no!
Yeah. She told detectives that Oziel had asked her to eavesdrop on a therapy session he had with the Menendez brothers on October 31st, 1989. Smith told the detective she overheard a shouting match between Lyle and Erik in which Lyle shouted, "I can't believe you told him. We have to kill him and anyone associated with him." According to Smith, Erik screamed back, "I can't stop you from what you have to do, but I can't kill anymore." The session ended when Erik ran out of the office sobbing. Smith saw Lyle leave the office, followed by Dr. Oziel. Smith told the detectives that she witnessed Lyle threaten Oziel. Smith said she heard Lyle say, "I can kind of understand Erik, but he shouldn't have done this." Oziel asked Lyle if he were threatening him, and Lyle shook his hand and said, "Good luck, Dr. Oziel." Sociopathic behaviors.
Oh my God.
Smith told the police that Oziel continued to have the brothers come in for counseling, telling them that he might be able to help them piece together events in their family's history that had caused them to kill their parents. Smith also told the detectives that Oziel told her that he had everything on tape, the confessions to the murders and explanations for why the brothers had committed the crimes. On March 8th, 1990, Zoller obtained a search warrant for Oziel's tapes based on the information that Smith had told him.
But oh man, I don't know the rules with that.
I don't think anyone did at this point. Oziel handed over 17 audio tapes and 7 pages of notes to Zoller and Linen. Oziel played portions of the tapes for the detectives, and they finally heard the details of what happened on August 20th, 1989 from the killers. Afterward, the tapes and notes were sealed into a police evidence bag and taken to the Los Angeles County Courthouse in Santa Monica. A judge would later rule whether the patient-therapist confidentiality barrier applied to the Menendez brothers. Around 1 p.m. on March 8th, this is 1990, Lyle and his friends decided to go out for lunch. Lyle's friends, these motherfuckers. Lyle's friends jumped into Erik's Jeep while Lyle got behind the wheel. The destination was the Cheesecake Factory. You think all the money they have, are they?
The Cheesecake Factory in California. That's the best. The Cheesecake Factory. That's saying something. I gotta go.
Okay, so they're heading out for the Cheesecake Factory. Down the street from the Elm Drive mansion, the Beverly Hills police were waiting. The police had decided against surrounding the mansion or storming it by force because Maria Menendez, Jose's mother, was living there at this time, and they didn't want anything to happen to her. The police were anxious to arrest Lyle because they had information that they were planning to leave Beverly Hills again. The police would have preferred to arrest Lyle and Erik together, but Erik was in Israel playing in a tennis tournament. So Lyle got into Erik's Jeep. Mm-hmm. Erik was not there, so. If that wasn't clear. Erik is out of the country. Glenn Stevens later recalled that he thought something was going on as the Jeep pulled away from the mansion. Stevens saw that a blue Ford with flashing lights had parked across the south end of Elm Drive. Lyle stopped the Jeep just short of running into the blue car. He threw the Jeep into reverse and crashed into a van that had driven up behind the Jeep to block Lyle's escape.
Nothing says guilty.
Nothing
like that.
Yeah. The police seemed to be everywhere. Someone screamed, "Get out of the Jeep." Lyle and his 2 friends got out of the Jeep and were handcuffed and taken to the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station. Lyle was booked at the station and then transported to the Los Angeles County Men's Jail in downtown Los Angeles. There was speculation in the media about whether Erik would flee from Israel, but according to a Menendez family member, Erik was very dependent upon Lyle. According to his relative, Erik would follow Lyle to hell even if it meant leaving heaven to do so.
Damn.
Yeah. Bold statement. After hearing about Lyle's arrest, Erik called his uncle Carlos from Israel. Brault told Erik that the best thing for him to do was to turn himself in. Erik flew to Miami to meet his aunt, Marta Cano. Cano notified Zoller and Linen that she was flying with Erik from Miami to Los Angeles. On March 11th, 1990, Detective Zoller and Linen met Erik and Marta at the Los Angeles International Airport. Zoller immediately took Erik into custody, and Erik was booked into the Los Angeles County Men's Jail. Despite this, the detectives were still trying to build an actual case against them because they have no actual evidence linking them to the crime. Mm-hmm. Their clothes aren't there. They got rid of the guns. There's really nothing.
Yeah.
They knew from the tapes that the boys had purchased the guns in San Diego and then disposed of them. They were never able to find the murder weapons, so they went shop to shop in San Diego to see if they could find any evidence of the purchase. It took them until almost the last couple of shops until they found a matching sale with a signed receipt of Lyle's friend, Donovan Goodrow. So, the police called him and asked where he was on that day, and there is evidence of him clocking in at work on the other side of the country that day, and the signature didn't match Donovan's exactly. Elliot Alduff, the assistant district attorney now assigned to the case, asked the court for an order allowing him to collect handwriting samples from Lyle and Erik to compare the signature on the firearm form.
My God, I would immediately forget how to
sign my name. Erik refused. Zoller had at last found a physical link between Jose and Kitty's murders and the Menendez brothers. So they know Donovan Goodrow didn't purchase this gun. They're 100% certain that Lyle and Erik did. All right, now we're getting into the trial.
Okay.
Selected to represent Erik was Leslie Abramson. This woman meant fucking business.
Hell yeah.
The Menendez case would be her 15th high-profile murder case.
Damn, she knows what she's doing.
She is devoted to her clients, so much so that her devotion to Erik would raise questions about her behavior and ethics during his trial.
Oh.
Eventually, the families retained Jill Lansing to represent Lyle. Both Abramson and Lansing hired attorneys to assist them. Abramson hired Marcia Morrissey, who was 43, who had also been a Los Angeles County public defender. Morrissey had just finished defending Laney Greenberger in the Cotton Club case. Lansing hired Michael Burt, who was the head trial attorney in the San Francisco Public Defender's Office and an expert in death penalty law. The Menendez brothers were arraigned for the murders of their parents on March 26, 1990, in Judge Judith Stein's courtroom at the Beverly Hills Municipal Court. The brothers entered the courtroom seeming to not care that their lives were on the line. The brothers had been in the Los Angeles County men's jail for 2 weeks, but neither had acted as if they had been in jail at all. Generally, a prisoner is contrite, worried, and overwhelmed by court proceedings. The brothers were not contrite. They acted smug and arrogant. The courtroom was filled with reporters and supporters of the brothers, including Erik's tennis coach and his ex-girlfriend, Jamie. Maria Menendez was also in the audience, supported by a large number of Menendez family members. The brothers waved and smiled at their friends and relatives and acted as if their defense attorneys would quickly clear things up so that the brothers could join their friends and family for a late lunch. Like, we're going to be out of here in no time.
What the fuck?
Dumb. Judge Stein did not seem to be impressed by the two. She did not seem to appreciate the casual bantering that went on between the men and their attorneys, and she did not like the amount of attention the men were paying to their girlfriends, family, and friends in the audience. They were slouching in their seats, very casual.
It's like they're at a fucking pep rally.
Literally. Judge Stein ordered the brothers to stand up and face her. They did so and seemed barely able to contain their laughs.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Judge Stein read the charges to the brothers. You have been charged with multiple murder for financial gain while lying in wait with a loaded firearm, for which, if convicted, you could receive the death penalty. How do you plead? Erik answered first, almost with a smirk on his face, not guilty, Your Honor, and then Erik also echoed, not guilty. The brothers were held without bail pending trial on first-degree murder charges with special circumstances. Elliot Alduff was to prosecute the Menendez brothers, but he and the district attorney, Ira Rainier, were not getting along. Rainier placed Alduff and gave the case back to Pam Ferrero. Pam ended up getting married, so the rest of this case she's referred to as Pam
Beasley?
Pam Beasley. Bozanic. B-O-Z-A-N-I-C-H.
Bozanic. Yeah.
Okay.
Bozanic. Something like that.
So Pam Ferrero and Pam Bozanic are the same person.
Pam.
Are
you saying Pam?
Pam.
Oh, 2 M's.
So the tapes. The tapes were a huge part of the case, and whether or not they could be used at all was up in the air. Santa Monica Superior Court Judge James Albrecht ruled that the threats Lyle made to Dr. Oziel erased the patient-therapist confidentiality barrier and ordered that the Oziel tapes be given to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office.
Damn.
2 of the tapes contained Oziel's dictated notes following the October 31st, November 2nd, and November 28th sessions. October 31st is when they confessed. The 3rd tape was of the December 11th session, taped with the consent of the brothers' attorney at the time, Gerald Chaliff. In California, the law protecting the patient-therapist privilege is well established and remains in effect even in situations where a killer confesses to his therapist that he murdered someone. Even in that situation, the privilege guarantees that the therapist cannot go to the police. If the therapist goes to the police, he could be sued for malpractice. The reason that the privilege is so strong is because the legislature recognizes that in order for psychotherapy to work, a patient must be free to reveal the most intimate details of his life. Mm-hmm. It was wild.
Yeah, that is crazy. I could never.
No.
I'm telling on you for sure.
I am tattling.
Or at least telling somebody.
Literally, anyone.
I could never be a therapist.
No. On August 6, 1990, Albrecht gave the prosecution a major victory. He said that all of the tapes could be used as evidence against the brothers.
Oh, shit.
The judge said, I have found by a preponderance of the evidence that Dr. Oziel had reasonable cause to believe that the brothers constituted a threat, and it was necessary to disclose those communications to prevent the threatened danger. Leslie Abramson promptly appealed the decision to the California Court of Appeals. On March 2, 1991, the California Court of Appeals overturned Albrecht's decision. The prosecutors then filed an appeal with the California Supreme Court. So no one can decide what can happen here. Part of the Court of Appeals decision said that Oziel had not acted as a psychotherapist during the last 2 taped sessions, but acted out of self-preservation, and that the purported theory was in fact a charade. The decision quoted freely from the tapes and was released to the public. For the first time, it was revealed that the Menendez brothers had in fact killed their parents. People don't know this yet. They're just like on trial. Nobody knows that they have admitted to this. Yeah. Nobody knows that they actually did it. The effect of this revelation on the Menendez and Anderson families ranged from shock to disbelief. Some of the family members who had been very vocal in their support of the brothers soon dropped out of sight. Because I think it does come up that they really did believe them at first. Yeah. They thought that like the brothers had been so scared that they had admitted to something they didn't do just to save themselves. And then it comes out like, no, they actually did this. On June 4th, 1992, the California Supreme Court heard arguments on the issue of the tapes. Leslie Abramson and Michael Burt argued for the brothers, saying that the only portions of the tapes that dealt with the threats to Oziel should be given to the prosecution. The court issued its ruling in August, deciding that the prosecution was entitled to 1 tape, the tape that was dictated by Oziel dealing with the October 31st and November 2nd sessions. The court decided that the release of the tape was not barred by the patient-therapist privilege because Oziel believed that the brothers had threatened him during the sessions covered on the tape. The court barred the release of the tape that covered the November 28th session and the December 11th tape made with Shell's consent. In those sessions, the court ruled that there was insufficient evidence of threats to warrant disclosure of the tape. To the prosecution, the real loss was the December 11th tape of the brothers discussing the murders. Now the trial can go on. So the December 11th tape was really where they got into like the nitty-gritty of it, and they can't use that at all. So the trial starts like 3 years later after this. They've been in jail the whole time. Damn. I mean, they were in a high-profile section of the jail, but jailed separately, obviously. It was called the 7,000s section. It was where people like Richard Ramirez and O.J. Simpson were held.
Jesus.
Yeah. They had to eat in their cells and were only allowed 3 hours per day outside of their cell. This obviously took a toll on them. Erik became suicidal. He began taking Xanax and was being visited by a priest. This is where the defense the boys really use comes from. Erik started opening up to this priest and revealing some of the trauma that they endured. Lyle was adjusting better. He would hog phone time, steal people's food. Shortly after the sheriff's deputies found Lyle's ankle chains almost cut through, they conducted an inspection of both Lyle and Erik's cells. They found a 17-page letter from Lyle to Erik, along with some notes in Erik's cell. The notes described plans to travel to South America and then to the Middle East.
What the fuck? He still thinks, like, no big thing.
No big deal.
We'll be on the outside soon enough.
Yeah. The deputies also found a drawing of the building with stairwells and doors. Deputies tried to match it to the courthouse that Lyle had been in, but could not find a building that drawing resembled. So they're thinking, like, they're drawing, like, an escape plan, but they couldn't ever find a building that matched what he was trying to draw. So nothing ever came from that. But Lyle's doing fine. Doing fine.
Still a prick.
In Lyle's letter, he tells Erik that he would never testify against him. Lyle also gives Erik advice that Lyle believes Jose would have given him. Lyle wrote, I am not an ordinary person. I do not see things in terms of manslaughter and life terms. I see only win, loss, honor, and dishonor. Dad is watching, and I will not disappoint him a second time or Mom by giving up or having their deaths be in vain.
What? You killed them for money.
Yeah, he's thinking like, well, Dad would want us to win this trial. Perhaps not.
No. Perhaps he would want you to go to prison for murdering him.
You would think. On December 8th, 1992, the Menendez brothers were indicted by the Los Angeles County Grand Jury on charges that they murdered their parents. They were eligible for the death penalty because of some special circumstances, like lying in wait, which refers to the fact that they hid and waited to surprise their victims. And 2, the crimes were motivated by financial gain, which sounds like the one you just did.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Stanley Weisberg presided over the trial. He was the judge for the first Rodney King case and caused the LA riots.
Oh, my God.
Just put that in perspective. On May 14th, 1993, Judge Weisberg ruled that in the cases of Lyle and Erik Menendez, they would be tried together in the interest of time, cost, and convenience. Weisberg saw that there would be an almost complete duplication of witnesses and arguments if separate trials were held for each brother, which is true.
That makes sense.
Weisberg ruled that each brother would have their own jury, though. This meant that if evidence that pertained only to Lyle was being heard, Erik's jury would be excluded and vice versa, so they can't hear things about just the other brother, which isn't that uncommon. This just happened to Paul and Ruben Flores in the Kristen Smart murder trial. They were tried together, but they had separate juries, which is weird. Both of their lawyers were very tight-lipped about what their defense would be. So nobody knows what they're going to use to try and get out of this because it's no longer a question of if they did it or not. They did it.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that. Bazanek, the prosecutor, wondered if they were trying to allege that there was not enough evidence that the boys did it. So, like, they're probably going to use the defense that you can't prove it.
Right.
So imagine everyone's surprised during a pretrial hearing on June 9th, 1993. Abramson said that the defense would admit that the brothers had murdered their parents. However, it was not their fault. It was actually Jose and Kitty's fault because Lyle and Erik were victims of abuse. The immediate problem with this is that there is no documented evidence of this at all. There's no paper trail. They never told anyone they were abused. They were never visibly hurt, which doesn't mean it didn't happen, but no one's like, we did see him with bruises here and there. None of that. Plenty of people never open up and speak about things like this, especially with how scary Jose was. Like, I could see that.
Right.
But it is going to make this defense impossible. Their lawyers try their hardest to make Erik and Lyle seem younger. They dress them very young. They would, pick lint off of their sweaters. They would rest their hands on their shoulders if they were talking, to make them seem like children.
Yeah.
The article said it was to make them seem like I'm not defending this monster. I'm, defending this misunderstood kid. Erik and Lyle also looked very different. The pretrial hearing, where they were cocky and smug, was long gone. They looked gaunt, pale, super skinny. Also, this trial is televised on court TV, so you can watch it.
I've seen clips of it for sure.
The defense also relied on a diagnostic tool developed by therapist E. Sue Bloom for use with incest survivors. The tool is a 34-item checklist that deals with after effects of childhood sexual abuse. Bloom's checklist had many items that could be applied to both brothers, but just normal things like disassociating, stealing, hiding secrets, fear of sleeping alone.
Yeah.
So they do check a lot of boxes, but they're not that hard of boxes to check. The trial began on July 20th, 1993, with Bazanek's opening statement laying out the case against Lyle.
Oh my God, we were tiny infants as this was happening.
We were just fresh new. Bazanek described the brutality of the murders, the 6 wounds to Jose and the 10 wounds to Kitty. She laid out the foundation for her theory that the brothers had killed their parents while lying in wait as the parents dozed. She described how Lyle had hired bodyguards after the murders because he feared for his own safety. Bazanek told the jury that from what we now know, this hint that his own life might have been in danger because of his parents' killing was a lie. Bazanek would often remind jurors throughout the trial that if Lyle and Erik could lie so frequently and in such detail to avoid being caught, they could also lie about child abuse to avoid a death sentence. Their shopping spree came up, obviously.
Yeah.
Jill Lansing began her opening statement by telling the jurors that Lyle and Erik Menendez killed their parents. Lansing said, "We are not disputing when it happened. The only thing that you are going to have to focus on this trial is why it happened." Lansing told the jury, "What we will prove to you is that the murders were committed out of fear of 2 parents who were so brutal, so manipulative, so sexually perverse that they drove their own sons to the most desperate act of defilement." Lansing would not reveal the details of the perversion or brutality at this point and went on to describe the lifestyle the brothers enjoyed growing up as a way to sort of say, listen, they did not murder their parents for money because they already had it. What were they set to benefit is her argument.
Well, in their minds, $90 million.
Yeah. Lansing explained that the catalyst for why the murders took place was the fear that the family's old secrets would be revealed and that those secrets would destroy the reputation of the perfect family. Lansing told the jury that the catalyst was Erik's revelation to his brother a few days before the killings that his father had been molesting him for 12 years. This revelation disturbed Lyle so thoroughly because he, too, had been molested by Jose from the ages of 6 to 8. Lansing described how Lyle had confronted Jose and told him that the abuse was going to stop. Lyle told his father that he was going to take his little brother and leave. According to Lansing, Jose told Lyle that he would do whatever he wanted with his son and that no one would threaten him. Lansing went on to say that Jose made it very clear to Lyle that this secret would never leave the family and that the people who held the secret and this power over him would not be allowed to live. According to Lansing, that is when the brothers drove to San Diego, purchased shotguns, all of that. Lansing explained that the murders were a result of what these children believed, as she continues to refer to them as children throughout the trial. On purpose, obviously.
They're
20.
Yeah, I'm like, no, these are adults.
Yeah. Lansing told the jury that neither brother had talked about the abuse until after they had been arrested and incarcerated for many months because their shame was so great. In her opening statement, Leslie Abramson expanded on the same themes that Jill Lansing had outlined during her opening statement to Lyle's jury, because they're being tried together, but semi-separately. Abramson told the jury that Lyle had acted the way he had to defend his brother. Erik needed to be defended because he was the real victim of the family. She acknowledged that Erik's revelation of abuse might look suspicious, especially after he had spent time in jail, but it didn't mean that he made it up. Abramson said that the reason that Erik didn't tell the truth earlier was because he did not trust Dr. Oziel or his best friend, Craig Signorelli. Abramson went on to describe how Erik was groomed for his father's sexual gratification. I think this might get kind of gross in a second. I'm not sure. Okay.
Trigger warning.
Yeah. She described various acts that Erik alleged were inflicted upon him by Jose. The defense had won the right to raise issues regarding Kitty's character to the jury. Maybe not. Lansing told Lyle's jury that her children were afraid of her and that's why she is dead. Abramson said that the brothers could not turn to Kitty for help and solace because all they found was a disturbed woman who dished out more abuse, sexual, physical, and psychological. Abramson echoed Lansing's opening statement when she described the week leading up to the murders. Abramson described how Kitty and Lyle had gotten into a screaming fight and how Kitty had reached up and yanked Lyle's hairpiece off his head.
Wait.
Yes. Brand new information.
Why is Lyle wearing a hairpiece at 20-something years old?
Apparently, Lyle had lost most of his hair when he was 14 and
What?
wore a toupee. Because Jose had once told him that it was better for his image if it appeared that he had a full head of hair.
Oh my God, can you imagine? No wonder he was such a prick. He has the lowest self-esteem imaginable.
Erik claimed that he did not know Lyle wore a toupee until it was snatched off his head.
His mother embarrassed him in front of his brother who worships the ground he walks on.
Yeah, so they say the shock of this alleged discovery made Erik take Lyle into his confidence.
Oh.
So this is when
he's
Erik,
like, listen, you don't have any hair, but listen to what's been going on to me.
Literally. Erik told Lyle that Jose had been molesting him for years. This led the brothers to attempt to purchase 2 handguns. However, they told their attorneys they could not purchase the weapons because there was a 2-week waiting period. Because the brothers were so fearful, they felt they had no time to waste. They drove to San Diego and purchased shotguns. Abramson told Erik's jury how much he looked forward to attending UCLA and moving away from home. 1 week before the murders, Jose told Erik that he would have to sleep at home several days a week so that Jose and Kitty could keep track of his schoolwork. Abramson said that Erik thought this meant that the sexual abuse would continue. After Abramson had finished her opening statement, Bazanik and Kuriyama reminded the jurors that Erik had confessed to Dr. Oziel. Erik had told Oziel about the killings of Jose because of Jose's harsh treatment of him, but had never mentioned sexual abuse. The same was true of Erik's confession to Craig Signorelli. Never came up. The brothers had never spoken about the abuse until they needed a legal defense almost 7 months after they murdered their parents. During the first phase of the trial, the prosecution called 26 witnesses. Most were minor participants in the drama of the case. The witnesses ranged from Lyle's bodyguards to the Big 5 store clerk who sold Erik the shotguns and the 2 computer experts who checked Kitty's computer for an updated will. The prosecution used these witnesses to show that the brothers were accomplished liars who planned and carried out the murder of their parents. The prosecution began its case by playing Lyle's 911 call to the Beverly Hills Police Department for the jurors, who now know that the whole thing is staged. He was never that distraught. That was a lie.
Sociopaths.
Yes. Bazanik wanted the jury to hear for themselves what a good actor Lyle was. Officer Michael Bucas testified that he witnessed Lyle and Erik run around and yell after the murders, but not cry over the deaths of their parents. Lyle and Erik's friends had turned on them. Perry Berman, Craig Signorelli, Donovan Goodrow, and Glenn Stevens testified for the prosecution. The prosecution used Berman's testimony to show that the brothers had tried to set up an alibi using a witness who never saw anything pertinent to the events of the night on August 20th, 1989. On July 26th, Craig Signorelli testified about his visit to the Menendez mansion 12 days after the murders, where Erik described to Craig how it happened. This was the first time that jurors heard Erik's version of the events that occurred in the family room and how it differed from the tale of two terrified young men killing for fear that they were about to be killed. Mm-hmm. Their argument is that they were going to be killed, that their parents were going to murder them. Very weird.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
Signorelli also told the jury that Erik had never told him of any sexual, psychological, or physical abuse. Goodrow testified that his wallet with his ID was left behind. Donovan also testified that he had once confided into Lyle that he had been molested when he was a little boy. Donovan recalled that Lyle did not respond with any similar stories or remarks about himself and never mentioned being sexually abused during the entire time they were roommates. However, his credibility comes into question later after an interview of his with Robert Rand aired where Donovan said he did hear that Jose had abused Lyle. So, who knows? Oziel testified that Erik told him the plan to kill Jose and Kitty was rooted, quote, in a situation where Erik was watching a BBC television show or movie, The Billionaires Boys Club. Oziel said that Erik told him that Jose had just been completely dominating and controlling and was impossible to please. Oziel also testified that the brothers decided to kill their mother because the brothers did not believe Kitty could have survived emotionally without Jose, doing her a favor. Erik also told Oziel that Jose's near disinheritance of him was an example of why he and Lyle had to kill their father. Oziel described the killings and said that Erik had told him that Jose and Kitty were surprised when the brothers burst into the family room. Oziel described the threats he had received from Lyle after the October 31st session in which Erik confessed to the murders. The defense case lasted 3 months.
Damn.
The defense had the difficult task of trying to prove to the juries that the brothers were in imminent danger before they killed their parents. Under California law, the imminent danger defense was the only way the brothers could be completely acquitted of the murders or have a chance of being convicted of manslaughter. So they're shooting for the stars.
Yeah, why?
We're going for an acquittal. And the only way to get that is imminent danger.
Yeah.
In order to obtain either of these verdicts, the defense needed to prove 2 things. That Lyle and Erik had been in fear for their lives, and that the conduct of their parents would have produced the same state of mind in a reasonable person. So, if we were in the same situation, we would have had to react in the same way.
No.
It would have had to elicit the same action from a person of sound mind.
No.
I am hearing your wheezing.
Yeah.
That I think is a cat.
Yeah, it's me.
Okay, Lyle's testimony. Lyle testified over a 9-day period, and his testimony was filled with stories about the alleged molestation that he suffered from the ages of 6 to 8, and the story that he had sexually molested his brother when Erik was 5 years old, which I don't think is that uncommon. If you are sexually molested, you will do it to someone else.
Yep.
Both Lyle and Erik cried frequently during Lyle's testimony. Lyle testified that at 13 he came to believe that his father was molesting his brother. Lyle testified that his father was so controlling and his mother was so emotionally unstable that he sought comfort in his own family of stuffed animals. Lyle testified... Okay, now we're going to get into, the gross shit for a couple minutes. Lyle testified that Kitty sexually abused him when he was 11 and 12. He claimed that he would touch Kitty, quote, everywhere, even when his father was sharing the same bed with them. Lyle's testimony was powerful and rich in detail. Lyle's testimony built up to his description of events leading up to the night of the murders, and he described shooting his father and then his mother for the jury, so Lyle does admit that he shot both of them. Jill Lansing asked Lyle why the brothers did not run away from home, and Lyle replied that there was no use in doing so because his father was powerful and would have found them. Lyle added that he and Erik believed the police would not have believed their stories of abuse. Before the defense allowed Lyle to be cross-examined, Lyle admitted offering his girlfriend, Jamie Pisarcik, money if she testified that Jose had made unwanted sexual advances towards her. Jamie refused and then told the police that Lyle tried to bribe her.
Oh my God.
In another attempt to thwart questions that might damage Lyle's credibility, Lansing brought up the fact that Lyle had never told Oziel about the sexual abuse. Lyle denied that he had bragged to Oziel about committing a perfect murder. Pam Bazanek cross-examined Lyle over a 4-day period. She belittled Lyle's accounts of killings and challenged him about the alleged abuse, but he did not break down. Bazanek was more successful in identifying inconsistencies in Lyle's versions of events. Bazanek was able to have Lyle admit that his parents did not have guns, had made no direct threats to either brother, and that parts of his story sounded awful and that a lot of decisions don't make sense. Okay, Erik's testimony. On September 27th, Erik began to testify. Erik's demeanor was ragged and edgy throughout his days and on the witness stand. He would stare out from narrow eyes, appearing dangerous and deranged, and a moment later he would appear wide-eyed and innocent. Most of the time he looked more mentally disturbed than sad or remorseful. Leslie Abramson did not help matters. She stood next to a stand behind the counsel table and led Erik through his testimony like a drill sergeant. Whenever Erik veered off course or tried to embellish an answer, Abramson interrupted and barked out another question. At times, she treated Erik like a hostile witness rather than her own client, which is insane. Mm-hmm. You see it all the time. The clients are answering a question and the lawyer immediately like, stop.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Sidebar. At a sidebar conference, Lester Kuriyama had complained that Abramson had been caressing and holding Erik in front of the jury.
Oh my gosh.
Kuriyama worried that this behavior made Erik appear childlike and innocent, which was what she was trying to do. Weisberg warned Abramson that the conduct of counsel in touching and physically reacting to the defendants is an area of concern. He told Abramson counsels are to be acting as professionals, not nursemaids or surrogate mothers. Erik testified that he believed his parents would kill him. He also said that Kitty seemed to have magical powers. She knew where he went, who his friends were, everything that he did. Erik's statements seemed difficult to believe, especially from a now 22-year-old man. This was part of the defense attempt to show that Lyle and Erik had been infantized by their parents' control and that neither brother was the age that they appeared to be. Erik testified about killing his parents and the sexual abuse he had allegedly suffered at Jose's hands. Okay, this gets really gross. I think this is like the last gross thing. Okay. At one point in his testimony, Erik volunteered that he had begun to put cinnamon in his father's tea and coffee because he had heard from classmates that it made semen taste better. It seems difficult to believe that this actually occurred because cinnamon has such a distinctive taste that Jose would have noticed there would have been cinnamon in his tea. Lester Kuriyama repeatedly tried to bring up issues of Erik's sexuality, but Judge Weisberg refused to allow it. Kuriyama felt that it was irrelevant because the defense was trying to make it appear that Jose was a sexual predator. One witness had testified to seeing gay porn magazines in the house, the implication being that they belonged to Jose, which could substantiate the claim that Jose had enjoyed sex with men. However, if the magazines belonged to Erik, it changes the entire situation. Under cross-examination, Erik made a giant mistake. Erik was again retelling how he and Lyle attempted to buy handguns at the Big Five in Santa Monica on Friday, August 18th, 1989. Erik described how the handguns were displayed in a glass case, but they couldn't purchase them because of a cooling-off period, and they felt they were in imminent danger, so they had to leave and buy them somewhere else. He tells his whole story, and then Kuriyama dropped a bombshell. He said, Mr. Menendez, did you know that the Big Five stopped carrying handguns in March of 1986? So the whole thing never happened.
Oh my God.
Ann Burgess was the second defense expert to testify. Burgess is a professor of psychiatric mental health nursing at the University of Pennsylvania and an expert in crime scene analysis. She examined the crime scene pictures of the Menendez family room and testified that it was a disorganized crime scene and could not have been the product of premeditated murder. Sort of makes sense. She also testified that the random nature of the wounds led her to believe that there was an overkill element of the crime, and this showed lack of planning. On October 21st, Jill Lansing's first expert witness testified. Stuart Hart, an Indiana University professor, testified about his belief that Lyle had been severely mistreated psychologically. Joe Conti was Lansing's next expert. He testified he interviewed Lyle in jail for 60 hours during 1993 and believed he was telling the truth about the abuse because of the effect that Lyle had. The effect was shame and a reluctance to talk about the abuse because it was embarrassing. Bazanek felt confident that the jurors did not believe the defense's expert witnesses or the brother's story of abuse. She was so confident that she decided not to call her psychological expert, who had sat through much of the early portion of the trial anyway. This may have been her biggest mistake. She was like, I feel so confident, I don't even need to call anyone. Mm-hmm. One of the last defense witness called was Dr. Carrie English, the medical director of the child abuse team at the Martin Luther King Hospital in South Central Los Angeles. This is also gross. He testified that he had found no evidence that Erik had been sodomized, although physical evidence of molestation is rare. Dr. English had reviewed Erik's medical records from the time he was a child and found a curious reference to a 1977 injury. The notation in Erik's medical file read, hurt posterior pharynx, uvulva and soft palate healing well. Dr. English asked if such an injury to the back of the throat could be caused by child abuse, and he answered yes, oral copulation. There are also other things that could cause such an injury, a popsicle stick during a fall, anything like that. The injury was suspicious and the first physical evidence of the issue of abuse. All of the other testimony had come from the brothers or from friends or family members who said they were given the information from the brothers. On cross-examination, Bazanek was obviously able to have him admit it could be from something else, but that is the first time that people are like, okay. The defense played the December 11th confession tape for the jurors after Judge Weisberg ruled that the defense had waived the patient-therapist privilege because they had made the mental state of the brothers an issue during the trial when they claimed that the brothers killed out of fear. On the tape, Lyle can be heard discussing the reason that his parents were killed. Lyle bragged on the tape that he and Erik had shown great courage by killing their mother. Lyle had also said, he missed having these people around. I miss not having my dog around, if I can make such a gross analogy. He's like, I miss the dog. I don't miss my parents. There was a chilling monotone quality to Lyle's voice. It was empty and hollow. On the tape, there's no reference to sexual abuse. Jose had to be killed because he was controlling the brothers' lives and was a bad husband. Erik did not say much on tape, but can be heard crying in the background, as he did the whole time. Mm-hmm. Judalyn Smith was called by the defense to discredit Oziel's testimony and testified for 2 days. Smith's testimony revolved around 2 themes. Oziel had manipulated and bullied her into a relationship, and many of her earlier statements about what she knew about Lyle and Erik were mistaken. Bazanek was angry that Smith had recanted her earlier statements, because she's the one who turned them in. Mm-hmm. She was the whole basis of this case. Bazanek believed that Smith was angry at the district attorney's office for not filing rape charges against Oziel, which she had alleged.
Oh my gosh.
Wild. Bazanek had referred Smith to the DA's Sex Crimes Division, which had rejected the case because of insufficient evidence.
So she was like, you know what? You know what I'm going to do?
I'm taking it all back. Bazanek cross-examined Smith about the different versions of the story she had told, and Smith answered that she was not responsible for her earlier answers because Oziel had brainwashed her. By the time her testimony ended, it appeared the jurors had a difficult time believing Smith. She was the last of 56 witnesses called by the defense.
Damn.
The aim of the prosecution's rebuttal witnesses was to contradict the stories told by the brothers about the days leading up to the murders and to rehabilitate the reputations of Jose and Kitty. Grant Walker, a man who cleaned pools for a living, testified that he was at the Menendez mansion fixing the switch on the automatic spa control on Saturday, August 19th, the day before the murders. Walker said that he saw Lyle playing tennis with another man while Erik stood next to Jose and Kitty, who were seated at a patio table pulled up to the tennis court. Walker testified that he witnessed Kitty speaking to Lyle about his tennis game. Lyle responded in anger and used vulgarity. Walker said that Erik also seemed angry with his parents. This exchange occurred around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, which the brothers said they were purposely staying away from home to get away from their parents. This is not true.
Yeah.
They were just there the day before. Flor Surya was the Menendez family housekeeper and had slept in the mansion Monday through Friday during the time she was employed by the family. She testified that she never saw Kitty or Jose yelling at the brothers. She also testified that she did not hear Lyle cry as his toupee was allegedly pulled off on Tuesday, and that she did not hear any other noise from the fight that Jose was supposed to have had with Erik on Thursday before the murder occurred. Jamie testified that she had been Lyle's girlfriend on and off for about 3 years. The relationship continued after Lyle was arrested until one day in December of 1990 when Jamie, having grown suspicious of Kyle, asked him to tell her the truth. Jamie testified that Lyle told her that he had lied to her and that the truth was that he had killed his parents. The reason for the murders was that Jose had been molesting Erik and Kitty had molested Lyle. Jamie told Lyle that she did not believe him, and shortly after this exchange took place, they had broken up. Jamie also testified that in 1987 she had gone with Lyle to purchase a toupee in Birmingham, Alabama, and that she and Erik had had a conversation about the toupee in 1988, which directly conflicted with a huge part of the defense's story that Erik had testified that seeing Lyle without his toupee shocked him in confessing the molestation, and this had led to the killings. The defense really tore into Jamie, though, for being a gold digger. Like, oh, once you found out he's a murderer, now you don't, like, your dreams were shattered, and now you're just trying to, like, ruin everyone's lives. Kitty's brother actually testified against the brothers, but the defense shot right back with a claim that Kitty's brother made against the estate after they died, in which he was trying to claim that if Jose died first and then Kitty, that they were actually entitled to the estate because for like a brief moment, everything went to Kitty when Jose died. So now they're saying we're entitled to that, actually.
Okay, well.
Yeah. The defense called Dr. Vicari as a witness to counter the rebuttal witnesses and support the validity of the alleged abuse. Vicari testified that Erik was a basket case, pathetic, wimpy, a hopeless man. When he first met him in jail, Erik had told Vicari about the molestation in August 1990, after Erik had undergone months of therapy and was taking antidepressant medication and tranquilizers. Bazanek asked if the reason that Erik was so upset in jail was because he was facing murder charges, and Vicari said no. He was quite shocked to see that Erik liked it in jail. Vicari added that Erik found for the first time in his life there was no pressure on him.
Yeah, you can just do whatever.
Yeah. Eric Heffernan was the last witness who testified at the trial. He was called by the defense to lessen the testimony of the pool man, Grant Walker, who testified that he saw the Menendez brothers on the afternoon of August 19th playing tennis. Heffernan testified that he was the brothers' tennis coach during the summer of 1989 and denied being at the Menendez mansion that day. Before closing arguments began, Judge Weisberg gave the prosecution another victory when he said there was simply no evidence that an average person would have been in fear of his life, as the brothers said they were, given the events that occurred on August 20th, 1989. So there's no acquittal happening here.
No.
There's no way anyone would be in fear.
You were not scared they were going to murder you.
Michael Burt began his closing argument by telling Lyle's jury that they must consider that the murders were carried out while the brothers were in a state of fear and panic that followed year after year of abuse by bullying parents. Burt said that Lyle was operating like an unthinking robot on the night of August 20th, 1989, and that he shot his parents on instinct and not as a part of a carefully thought-out plan. Burt argued that the circumstances under which the murders took place did not meet the legal standards for first-degree murder. Bozanek replied by stating that this is not a complicated case. These two people were watching TV and they got slaughtered by their sons. She challenged Burt's idea that the brothers did not plan the murders, pointing out they drove to San Diego to purchase shotguns. Bozanek also quoted from the transcript of Oziel's session where Lyle said that there would be no way he would have carried out the shootings alone and had decided to let Eric sleep on the plan. So on the tapes they're saying they had talked about it and literally tabled it to come back to later.
Yeah. Let's circle back.
Yeah. Jill Lansing walked the jurors through the crime and asked them to consider the entire event dating back to Lyle's childhood sexual molestation. During her 3-day closing argument, Abramson finally did something that the prosecution had hoped Eric would have done 3 years earlier. She broke ranks with Lyle. She told jurors that I don't want Eric to be taking the rap for Lyle, and that the evidence in this case does not prove that Eric killed anybody. Which really is shocking it took them that long to be like, okay, listen.
Separate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they realized they're both going down, so she's like, you don't have to go down for this. Lester Kuriyama's final argument was completed in 3 hours. He told the jury that he would not attempt to dazzle them, but instead asked the jury to base your decisions in this case on common sense. He told the jury that Eric was a homosexual, and the reason he raised the issue was that if the defendant were engaging in consensual sex with other men, that would account for him being able to describe what he described for you, his sexual encounters with his father. Kuriyama went on to tell the jury that Jose had not forced Eric into homosexual acts, but was in fact furious that Eric was gay. Judge Weisberg gave Lyle and Eric's juries 4 choices in deciding the brothers' fate. The juries could find the brothers guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances. They could find the brothers guilty of second-degree murder. They could find the brothers guilty of voluntary manslaughter, or they could find the brothers guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Lyle and Eric each faced sentencing on 3 counts: the murder of Jose, the murder of Kitty, and the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. On January 13th, 1994, after 16 days of deliberation, Eric's jury announced that it was deadlocked and unable to reach an agreement on any of the counts.
Oh my God.
On January 25th, after deliberating for 24 days, Lyle's jury announced that it was also deadlocked.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine? The juries for both brothers were polarized over whether the brothers were killers or long-suffering victims of abuse. Judge Weisberg declared mistrials in both cases.
Holy shit.
The outcomes of the cases were a victory for the defense. Only 3 of the jurors on Lyle's jury voted for the most serious charge of first-degree murder in the shooting of his father, Jose, while 5 did so on Eric's jury. So that's still not even a majority. Mm-hmm. Gil Garcetti, the district attorney who replaced Ira Rainier, said that the Menendez brothers would be retried, obviously. On February 28th, 1995, Judge Weisberg set a trial date of June 12th, 1995 for the retrial of the Menendez brothers. The retrial was postponed a number of times and began in August of 1995. In April 1995, Judge Weisberg ruled that the brothers would be retried together in front of a single jury. Weisberg ruled that the advantages of single trial greatly outweigh the potential prejudice. This is a year and a half later, if you're doing the math, of them being mistrialed. Honestly, the bulk of this trial works out exactly the same. They're different prosecutors, different attorneys, but for the most part, the defense maintains that Lyle and Eric were scared. The prosecution maintains that they murdered their parents for money. The prosecution also made little changes. They didn't actually have Dr. Oziel testify this time. Instead, they just played the tapes, which is smart. Mm-hmm. So the prosecution played these tapes: the police interview a month after they murdered their parents when they were still pretending they didn't, the confession tape, and then obviously the fake 911 call. Carlos Baralt testified that 2 months before the murder, Jose told him that he wanted to disinherit his sons. Khan asked Baralt if he knew of any evidence that Jose sexually abused his son, and Baralt answered no. On cross-examination, Baralt was asked by Leslie Abramson why Jose had talked about disinheriting his sons, And Brawl answered that Jose was disappointed that Lyle was failing academically in Princeton, and that in Jose's opinion, Erik lacked talent, toughness, and forcefulness. During the third week of the trial, Conn announced that Dr. Erwin Golden, the coroner who performed the autopsies on Jose and Kitty, would not testify at the trial. Golden had testified at the first trial that he could not say for certain how many shots were fired or the sequence of shots that killed the couple. In 1995, Golden was heavily criticized for the mistakes he made in the autopsies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, and was not called by the prosecution in the O.J. Simpson case because of those mistakes. Conn had Roger McCarthy reconstruct the shootings. Under his reconstruction, McCarthy was able to determine the sequence of shots and show that the murders were premeditated and deliberate. Roger McCarthy of Failure Analysis Associates reconstructed the August 20th, 1989 murders shot by shot and showed the jurors a computer-generated recreation of the murders. McCarthy was the prosecution's star witness and testified that their brothers surprised their parents as they sat in front of the television set in the family room. McCarthy testified that Jose and Kitty were sitting side by side on the sofa when they were attacked, and that the brothers aimed kneecapping shots at their parents to make the killings look like a mafia hit. The brothers maintained throughout their trial that their parents were standing when the shooting began. Gessler questioned McCarthy about his qualification to examine the Menendez murder scene. McCarthy testified that he had never visited a crime scene or witnessed an autopsy, and that he had never seen the impact of a gunshot wound on a human body.
Oh, God.
He also conceded that he did not consult with the coroners or criminalists before reaching his conclusion about the Menendez murders.
Okay, so
what are you doing here? On November 20th, Conn rested the state's case against the Menendez brothers. He had called 30 witnesses. The cornerstone of the state's case was McCarthy's computer-generated reconstruction. Conn used the reconstruction to demonstrate to the jurors that the brothers had deliberately and methodically killed their parents. The reconstruction was strongly disputed by the defense and contradicted the brothers' testimony in the first trial, where the brothers testified they had fired their guns in a blind panic. Also, he doesn't know what he's talking about. The defense began its case by calling Martin Fackler, an expert on wound ballistics. Fackler testified that the McCarthy reconstruction could not be considered scientific because it contained too many errors. Fackler said that no one could design a reconstruction of the Menendez crime scene because there were too many variables, which is true. Mm-hmm. Under Conn's cross-examination, Fackler demonstrated that he did not know the facts of the Menendez case as well as McCarthy. There was a lot of testimony of whether or not Jose and Kitty were standing when they were shot. For some reason, that comes up a lot. Erik testified for 15 days, essentially the same. The judge allowed less of Erik's alleged childhood stories at this time, which the defense argued against because their basis is that the childhood is extremely important to what had happened. Mm-hmm. And Erik testified that Jose had told him that he had written him out of his will because he was not living up to Jose's expectations, and conceded that there was no living witnesses to the alleged abuse. Because Erik had tendered his mental state as a part of his defense, Judge Weisberg ruled that Erik had to undergo a psychological examination by Dr. Dietz. Prior to his involvement in the Menendez case, Dietz had testified in numerous high-profile trials. His critics say that he is biased in favor of the prosecution. Dietz had assisted many prosecutors in winning convictions against defendants such as Betty Broderick, who fatally shot her ex-husband and his second wife, and serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. John Wilson, a psychology professor from Cleveland State University, testified that Erik suffered from PTSD at the time he killed his parents. Wilson testified that the cause of Erik's disorder was the repeated acts of sexual, physical, and psychological abuse that he had experienced. Wilson said that Erik had suffered from the classic symptoms of PTSD that include nightmares, amnesia. This was the first time that the jurors had heard a specific diagnosis applied to Erik Menendez. Wilson did not testify at the first trial. On January 12th, Charles Gessler completely changed the direction of Lyle's defense. Gessler told the court that he had planned to argue that Lyle killed his parents in the heat of passion, that fear and anger overwhelmed him when he murdered their parents. During the first trial, Lyle had testified that he had killed his parents out of the honest and mistaken belief that his parents were going to kill him and that he was afraid for his life. How? I don't know.
That's not a mistaken belief.
No. Gessler now told the jury that Lyle was a reasonable man who acted out of fear, anger, and passion. At the first trial, the defense used the imperfect self-defense theory and argued that the brothers could not be judged by the standard of what a reasonable person would do because years of abuse had caused the brothers to see danger differently than a normal person. The reason that Lyle's attorney changed the defense strategies was Lyle did not want to testify because of damaging impeachment evidence the prosecution had gathered since the first trial. Lyle was considered a sympathetic witness during the first trial. However, prosecutors had tape-recorded conversations between Lyle and Norma Novelli, Lyle's one-time confidant, where Lyle describes how he snowed the jury at his first trial with testimonies about abuse.
Oh my God.
More. The prosecution also discovered a letter that Lyle had written to a former girlfriend instructing her on how to testify at the first trial. Because Lyle did not testify, his attorneys were not able to call child abuse experts to testify about his state of mind. And without Lyle's testimony, he was not able to use the same defense he had in his first trial. On January 30th, after presenting 25 witnesses, the defense rested. Judge Weisberg limited the number of mental health experts the defense was allowed to present. In the first trial, the defense presented 5 experts. At the second trial, the defense was only allowed to present 1. In addition, the defense was not allowed to present the testimony of Dr. William Vicari, the psychiatrist who had treated Erik since 1990, whom he had admitted his abuse to.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecution began its rebuttal on February 5th, 1996. Jamie again testified about the toupee. Dietz testified that Erik did not suffer from any disorder that would impair his ability to make rational decisions on the night he murdered his parents. He diagnosed Erik as suffering from generalized anxiety disorder, the inability to control his restlessness, worry, and irritability. Dietz had interviewed Erik for 16 hours at the Beverly Hills Police Department. The defense contended that Erik suffered from PTSD. Dietz testified that it was impossible to diagnose Erik with this disorder because there was no way of knowing if the events were true. You can't have PTSD from something that did not happen. On February 16th, Judge Weisberg ruled that there was insufficient evidence that the brothers were in imminent danger when they fatally shot their parents, and that the imperfect self-defense jury instructions that the defense sought would not be read to the jury after closing arguments. So they're not allowed to hear that they can even consider this. So they can't be convicted of manslaughter. Judge Weisberg ruled that the defense could argue that the brothers shot Jose in the heat of passion, but not Kitty. Weisberg ruled that there was sufficient evidence to show that Jose might have provoked his sons into committing a homicide, but there was insufficient evidence to show that Kitty provoked her sons, which they essentially admitted when they said they shot Kitty so she wouldn't be a witness.
Yeah.
On February 20th, Kahn began the first of 4 days of closing arguments. He ridiculed the brothers' claims as the silliest, most ridiculous story ever told in a courtroom. He was very sarcastic and belittling. On February 26th, Abramson began the first of 3 days of closing arguments. She accused David Kahn of presenting fraudulent witnesses in an effort to win a case for political reasons. Abramson was trying to point out to the jury that the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office was under enormous pressure to win a big case after losing the McMartin preschool molestation case, the first Menendez trial, and then the O.J. Simpson murder trial. So, like, you are making shit up just so that you don't look more shitty. On March 1st, the jury began to deliberate. On March 14th, Judge Weisberg removed 2 female jurors, including a 4-person for medical reasons. The 4-person had suffered a heart attack, and another female juror had gone into premature labor. So the second jury ended up consisting of 8 men and 4 women. On March 20th, after 4 days of deliberation, the jury convicted the Menendez brothers each of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as conspiracy to commit murder. Jurors also found that there were 2 special circumstances attached to the murders, lying in wait and multiple murder. Because special circumstances were found, there were only 2 sentencing options: life in prison without the possibility of parole or death by execution. The same jury that found the brothers guilty of first-degree murder would deliberate after a second, smaller trial called the penalty phase to determine the brothers' sentences. The penalty phase began on March 22nd, 1996, and was completed in 3 weeks. The defense called 18 witnesses to testify on behalf of the brothers. The rules of evidence were different in the penalty phase than the brothers' trial. Since the jurors were being asked to make a life or death decision, the defense was permitted to appeal to the jury's sympathy, which is fair. You are going to kill someone. The rules allowed the defense to offer evidence of mitigating factors, such as the brothers' ages, whether they were under the influence of extreme mental or emotional distress, whether the victims were participants of their own death, or any other evidence that diminished the gravity of the crime. On April 4th, during the second week of the penalty phase, an unexpected and stunning thing happened in court. Dr. Vicari, the psychiatrist who had treated Erik since 1990, admitted that he doctored his notes at the direction of Leslie Abramson. Under cross-examination, Vicari admitted that he admitted from his notes entire sections containing incriminating statements by Erik Menendez. So that was all made up. After hearing arguments outside the presence of the jury, Judge Weisberg rejected defense motions for mistrials for both brothers, because technically, even though it did benefit them, it could constitute a mistrial because someone lied up the information. Yeah. The defense had tried to argue that a mistrial should be declared because of her ineffective assistance of counsel. Weisberg ruled that Lyle could not make that argument because she wasn't his lawyer. She was only Erik's lawyer. Weisberg also ruled that Barry Levine was perfectly capable of taking over Erik's case if she decided not to continue. And I don't think she did continue. On April 17th, 1996, after deliberating for 3 days, the jury decided that life in prison was the appropriate punishment for Lyle and Erik. So they did not get the death penalty. The jury later said that the abuse defense was never a factor in their deliberations, and that the jury decided to spare the brothers' lives because neither brother had had a felony record or a history of violence. Although some jurors said they were sympathetic to the brothers' upbringing, that it may have contributed to the murders being committed, in the end they could not excuse it. Several jurors believed psychological abuse, but a lot of them questioned whether the sexual abuse happened at all. On June 1st, defense attorneys for the Menendez brothers filed a motion in Judge Weisberg's court seeking a new trial. The motion argued that Judge Weisberg erred when he refused to allow the jury to consider manslaughter verdicts. So like I said, they told the jury they were not allowed to consider that. They're saying they should have been able to at least consider it. Prior to being formally sentenced on July 2nd, 1996, Lyle and Erik gave an interview to Barbara Walters for the television program 2020. The purpose of the interview was to gain public support for the brothers' bid to be imprisoned together. A committee of California state correction officials ultimately made the decision of whether to imprison the brothers together. David Kahn said that he had no position on whether the brothers were imprisoned together or apart as long as they did not receive any special treatment. On July 2nd, 1996, Judge Weisberg sentenced Lyle and Erik Menendez to life in prison without the possibility of parole formally. Weisberg sentenced the brothers to consecutive sentences for the murders. A few weeks after the sentences were announced, Lyle and Erik were taken to North Kern State Prison at Delano, a Department of Corrections reception center outside of Los Angeles, for diagnostic evaluation. A decision whether the brothers were to be imprisoned together was made after the evaluation was completed. On September 10th, 1996, the California Department of Corrections separated the Menendez brothers. Lyle was bused from the North Kern State Prison to the California Correctional Institute near Techacapi, and Erik was bused to the California State Prison near Sacramento. Lyle and Erik were segregated from other prisoners and classified as maximum security inmates. Okay. Each brother had gotten married in prison to women from the outside.
Makes sense.
Erik married his pen pal, Tammy, in 1999. She said, "Not having sex in my life is difficult, but it's not a problem for me." She wrote a book in 2005. They said we'd never make it. My life with Erik Menendez. She told People that year that I have to be physically detached. I'm emotionally attached to Erik. My family does not understand.
No shit. You don't say.
Well, Lyle has found 2 women willing to marry him. Anna Erickson, a former model who divorced him after a year when she found out he had been writing to other women. He'd been cheating on her.
Even in prison.
And then Rebecca Sneed, a journalist who he married in 2003. I have no indication that they have gotten divorced, so they both might actually still be married.
And they're, like, still alive.
Yeah. The brothers were reunited in 2018 after hearing that basically said there is really no reason they can't be in the same place anymore. Right. Lyle told the Daily Mail in 2018, "I burst into tears. I had to walk a long way to see him. When he got brought over in a van, I was able to see him coming off and meet him. I wasn't sure how I'd react." He said it was just a bunch of adrenaline. He, burst into tears. They hadn't seen each other at all in 22 years up to this point.
Wild.
Yeah. They're obviously not cellmates. They're at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility together now. Lyle said, "I'm the kid that did kill his parents, and no River of Tears has changed that." In an April 2017 special, another 2020 special, "And no amount of regret has changed it. You are often defined by a few moments of your life, but that's not who you are in your life. Your life is a totality of it." But he added, "I think I will end up being in this nightmare of horrifying event and tragedy when I die." Like, he's still going to be in prison.
Correct.
Erik felt he deserved to go to prison, but I don't believe I deserve to be in here now, and I may well get out of prison one day. I'm still working on my appeal. I don't know if that's realistic, but the death of hope is the death of the heart. I can't think about it, and if I was serving any good purpose in being here for life, then I could say it was the right thing, but I'm not. So this case had a huge resurgence thanks to TikTok. TikTok has reintroduced the case to a whole new set of eyes in a time where sexual abuse, especially sexual abuse of males, is taken much more seriously. They did a letter writing campaign to Gavin Newsom to free, they want him freed, out of jail. Journalist Rob Rand tells A&E True Crime that the streets of California are not safer because Erik and Lyle Menendez are locked up in prison. It's not definite, but the author of the Menendez murders anticipates that in 2023, lawyers are going to file a writ of habeas corpus and they're going to ask for a new trial. The threshold for filing is you have to have new evidence that was not available at the time of the trial, and they do. He notes, referring to a 1988 letter Erik wrote about his father's molestation. The letter could instigate and reprieve for the brothers at the time when society is more empathetic towards male victims of sexual abuse. Despite the advocacy, significant obstacles exist to release Lyle and Erik Menendez. Given their sentences, it's unclear to me, a Loyola professor says, how they would get a parole hearing because they're not elderly. And he doesn't know of any other laws that would lead to their resentencing. Like, I think if you're an old person, they'll, like, really look at everything. Like, is this really necessary?
Right.
They're not that. It's not as simple as walking in and saying we were victims of abuse because it came up in trial. It's not a new factor.
They still didn't. Yeah. You still ended up here.
As appealing directly to Newsom, I think they're probably not likely successful. High-profile cases make it less likely you're going to get relief, which is true.
Right.
Rand, who interviewed the brothers 2 months after the murders and keeps in touch with the family, visited Lyle Menendez in May 2022 and describes his both brothers as well. In general, Lyle is doing well. He looks great. What's really important about Lyle and Erik in 2022 is that they are both contributing quite a bit to their prison community. Lyle is very involved in prison reform activism. Both brothers are working together on a large mural being painted. Erik leads several self-help groups every week at Donovan, including a mindful meditation group, and has started a hospice group at Donovan, and that the brothers counsel other prisoners who are sexual abuse victims.
Wow.
That's it. Short and sweet, baby.
Yeah, thank you.
Concise.
Wow, but I don't know what I believe.
Me either.
I feel like just from who their dad was, like, and he was cheating on his wife with all these other, like, I don't know that I believe they were sexually abused, but you hate to say that.
I know, you do hate to say it.
But Lyle could also lie about literally anything.
Anything. They're sociopaths.
Yeah, so I don't think I believe them.
Interested to see the 1988 letter.
I know.
If that goes to trial. Because that will make the whole thing different.
That could be a completely different thing.
Because they hadn't murdered their parents yet.
Right.
So they have no reason to lie about it.
Yeah.
We could see a new trial. God, a new Menendez trial. We could see a new Peterson trial.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing a new trial for this. I feel like if that letter uncovers all this abuse to be true, then I think they have a much better defense.
I think without the letter, if they tried this in today's times, I don't think they would have gone to prison for life. I think the sexual abuse thing would have been taken far more seriously than it was.
Yeah, I don't think they would have gone for life.
Yeah, I don't think they would have, like, laughed at them.
Though.
You never
Well, they're
know.
two white men.
Yeah.
You're right. I don't think they would have gone
White
for
presenting.
life.
They are Cuban, but they do look like two rich
right.
white men.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. Tamara was supposed to leave an hour ago,
Yeah, I gotta
so
go. I'm going to be in big fat trouble.
we have to leave. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at AlmostPod. If you want an additional episode every week, you can find us at Patreon at AlmostPod.
If you have a case you want us to cover, throw it in a review on Apple Podcasts. You can find merch and all other information at bitchpackmedia.com. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.